I look back at my own past sometimes and wonder what I would have been if all that happened to me had not happened. Well, I would have lived an ordinary life on the ordinary level of consciousness, lived a life of ignorance, and died an ignorant death, only to be born again and go through the whole thirsty crow once again. I am glad that my world fell apart when I was 17. If it had fallen apart when I was 70, I could have done nothing much about it. God gave me ample amount of time to work on the project of self-realization. He knew how long it is going to take and of what use it can be to the rest of us. God is no doubt great. As I said, the general progression of soul in a spiritual journey is first a withdrawal, then a tunnel, then a path, and finally a surrender. But how long an individual stays in one phase before moving on to the next is different for everyone. Some souls are very intense, like that of Acharya Rajneesh. They flow through life and its experiences like a river. Others are slow and reluctant to too much of change. God has to coax them into evolution. Some can learn from the pain of others, while some cannot even learn from their own pain. Anyway, the price of bliss stays the same. You can pay it in 500 small installments or the whole amount in cash. It depends upon you. This uniqueness of a soul is responsible for the spectrum of temperaments that you find in the enlightened ones. They are all similar and yet so different. With the withdrawal, the journey within has begun. Once you have stayed there for a few years, you are sure that there is nothing on the outside, and your only option is to keep on moving within. Even the darkness of the inside seems more promising than the fake glitters of the outside world. Even the gloom of being alone feels better than the shallow festivals of the crowd. You are absolutely sure that the crowd cannot answer your questions and solve your problem. You are miserable, but that misery reminds you that you are. You cannot afford to lose yourself in the crowd. This social boycott does not lessen your pain. It only increases it, solidifies it, and allows it to mature. I had forgotten a very important aspect of this transformation, the birth of a rebel. A spiritual quest is the greatest revolution a soul can participate in or volunteer for. Men have revolted to free their motherlands from foreign rulers, only to be enslaved by their own politicians decades later. But a soul, once freed, cannot be enslaved by anyone. The rebellion of the spirit is the most meaningful of all, and the liberation that comes from it is the only true liberation. Unless you conquer the forces of your lust, greed, anger, attachment and ego, it's no use fighting battles with enemies on the outside. With the withdrawal, the rebel in you is born. You want to rebel against all ideologies that cannot do something about your pain. You don't feel like following any religion, and you have absolutely no respect for ceremonial holiness. Unknowingly, you are creating space for the real thing. The withdrawal is the first quarter of the spiritual quest, and the spiritual quest is in actual the quest for authentic religion, the religion beyond all isms and all names, the nameless, as Lao Tzu calls it. The mass can never discover God. The mass can never find true religion. Because for that, you need a soul. And the mass doesn't have a soul. The greatest crimes are not committed by an individual. They are always committed by a mass. Because it doesn't have a soul. Withdrawing from the mass means you're asking for a soul. Your soul. You want to have a soul. No one ever found true religion by listening to sermons. They always found it by listening to the voice within. When you have cut yourself off from the noise of a crowd, you are able to hear a whisper inside. The whisper that can be trusted. The whisper of your source. Yogis in Tibet, who are serious about knowing all that can be known, go for an organized withdrawal called the retreat. They live in an isolated cave for 3 years, 3 months and 3 days, totally cut off from their fellow beings and the normal life. But whether you organize it for yourself or God organizes it for you, a withdrawal is a withdrawal. When they were interviewed, they revealed that inside the cave, the only thing that can trouble them is their own mind. And in fact, it is only then that they realize what a troublemaker the mind is. The same is our case. The first time you come face to face with your own mind is after a withdrawal. The truth is, we are unable to take that initial momentum of the mind and are soon looking for an escape from its encounters. You don't want the crowd, and you also don't want your mind. This is where all kinds of escapes like drugs, psychedelics, alcohol, and adventure creep in and rescue you from an almost impossible situation. But as Shri Ram Das says, all methods are traps. So you find yourself rescued from one situation and trapped in another. This I would call a tunnel.